Hello YouTubers, how are you today? I hope you're doing good. This commentary is in response to Open Air Atheist's recent videos that try to refute one of my previous commentaries dealing with some of his arguments and questions. I find it rather surprising that I am even here doing this commentary, especially after what happened after I posted my three-part series on Open Air Atheist and his videos. After listening to my commentary, he wrote me and asked me if I'd do a debate with him on Skype. I told him I wasn't interested and told him why. He then wrote back and said that I was a small fish and that he didn't have the time to go back and forth with me in depth, either by email or YouTube, and that I should have a good life. And then he threw in a vulgar comment in closing. And yet here he is trying to refute me, the small fish, with 2 videos. I guess he couldn't find any bigger fish to fry. Or maybe he remembered the last time he tried with James White. He got his clock cleaned. There he tried to present his argument in broad generalities, like saying there was no debate in the scientific community over evolution. But Dr. White wouldn't let him do it and pressed him for some detail. Well, he couldn't provide any detail in support of that claim. Well, I wasn't about to fall for that either, and told him I'd debate him on YouTube. So he boldly now chooses to get into some detail and shows himself to be faring not much better than he did the first time. So I'll get into his recent videos and show why. In my previous refutation of his videos, I had expressed some puzzlement over why Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron weren't able to do anything with Open Air Atheist. And now with the latest release of his responses to me, it becomes not so much a mystery. He knows full well that I utilize what I call a troll filter. That is, I require approval of all comments before I post them. This discourages the atheistic trolls from trying to post their obscenities in my channel. And it works quite well. So what does he do? He sends me videos laced with obscene gestures and vulgarities and profanity, and he has the goal to think I'm going to approve it. Apparently, Open Air Atheist seems to have a need to appear to be macho or something like that. Or maybe it's just that he's an atheist shock jock wannabe. Well, if that's the case, he's off to a good start. It has been my experience on YouTube that the atheists who use the most profanity in their videos are the ones who have the most ignorant comments and arguments. And I am working on a montage of YouTube atheists to prove that point. Be on the lookout for it in the future. It will be coming soon to your computer. But as for Open Air Atheist, sorry pal, it ain't happening. You can go and post your responses to me independently from my channel so that your troll backers can have their daily fix of vulgarity. But it ain't getting the okay from me in my channel. Okay, let's get to your responses, shall we?
Then you go on to quote from Isaiah 53, and you talk about here, first of all, you're presupposing that this is talking about Jesus. When in other videos, I've already clearly shown that this is not talking about Jesus, and the suffering servant is actually Jeshurun. You asserting that this is talking about Jesus Christ is a mere assertion, which you have yet to provide any kind of evidence for that.
I would also have to venture a guess that although Comfort and Cameron would not have stopped praying for you, they also saw that you were incapable of understanding spiritually discerned things, and you couldn't even accept things that didn't really require great spirituality to discern. Simple truths, like Isaiah 53 is all about the Messiah. You say it isn't. James White believes it is about Christ. The entire staff of Dallas Theological Seminary believe it is about Christ. Dr. Norman Geisler believes it is about Christ. In fact, I challenge Open Air Atheists to name a single reputable Orthodox Christian theologian who claims it isn't.
So again, you're not using proper biblical hermeneutics, you're taking verses out of their context.
Let me introduce James to the hermeneutics of Charles Haddon Spurgeon. Spurgeon gave a sermon on Isaiah 53 at the Metropolitan Tabernacle in Newington in 1866. And I'll quote from that sermon. I quote, "I hear no dolorous wailings attending this confession of sin, for the next sentence makes it almost a song. The Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. It is the most grievous sentence of the three, but it is the most charming and the most full of comfort. Strange is it that where misery was concentrated, mercy reigned, and where sorrow reached her climax, there it is that a weary soul finds sweetest rest. The Savior bruised is the healing of bruised hearts. I want now to draw the hearts of all who feel the confession to the blessed doctrine set forth in the text. The Lord hath laid on Christ the iniquity of us all." Unquote.
First of all, yes. When I said that I at once, when I was a Christian, I had basically the same theological beliefs as Charles Spurgeon, and that's the truth.
I guess open atheists missed that sermon of Spurgeon's on Isaiah 53. The arrogance of open air atheists would have you believe that his hermeneutics are superior to all of the above people mentioned. Even Jewish rabbis know this is true, as can be gleaned from the writings of one of the great rabbis, the Rambam Maimonides, who, although he did not believe that Christ was the Messiah, he did feel, though, that Isaiah 53 referred to the Messiah in his letter to Yemen.
Christian, this is your common, he espouses the common theology of Christianity nowadays, which has only been around for a very short amount of time. His type of theology was propagated by Jacobus Arminius in the 1600s, and Charles Finney, and one of the Wesley brothers, and so on and so forth. So his theology is not orthodox. What is now considered the norm was only 200 years ago was considered heresy.
Here he exposes himself as historically illiterate in this context, for you can find the free will teaching in the writings of St. Augustine, Justin Martyr, Clement of Alexandria, Cassian, Aquinas, just to name a few. Aquinas gave the following logical response, and I quote, "Man has free will, otherwise counsels, exhortations, commands, prohibitions, rewards, and punishments would be in vain," unquote. So, open-air atheists, your idea that the free will doctrine dates back only to the 1600s is false.
So therefore, you can't blame me for being an atheist. And no one can choose God unless God has chosen them. And God hasn't chosen everyone. Many are called, but few are chosen. Don't you remember that? Don't you remember Jesus saying this?
Chosen for what? Who says it's about salvation? You keep talking about context. Why don't you pay attention to the context of Matthew 20? It's all about the workers grumbling about the fact that they labored all day and yet got paid the same amount as those who came at the 11th hour. Both groups got the exact same thing. It wasn't a case of one receiving more than the other. It wasn't a case of one receiving salvation and the other being damned. And you want to talk about hermeneutics? Give me a break.
Now, also, you quote from Charles Spurgeon, and you take that quote, you just rip it out of its context.
That's always the pat answer for atheists when they get refuted by an authoritarian quote. And my answer to them, if they try that, is to say, show me the context that changes the meaning of the quote. And they always fold like a cheap suit and find another flimsy excuse or change the subject. You'll notice Open Air Atheist doesn't show you the context. Instead, he just makes the assertion, and of course, we're supposed to accept it as fact just because it was the great Open Air Atheist who is asserting it. No, Spurgeon's quote is self-explanatory and needs no further clarification.
Now, I notice you keep using the term hyper-Calvinists, and there is no such thing as a hyper-Calvinist.
This guy is unbelievable. James, do you even know how to use a search engine? Try this, James. Open up your favorite search engine, key in the word hyper-Calvinism, and press enter. You'll get a Wikipedia history of the term that you say doesn't exist. In fact, I'll make it easier for you, James, just in case you're having trouble with that. Here's the link.
Funny that you play James White's clips from me and his conversation when James White considers your theology to be heretical.
Whatever James White may think about my position on free will is irrelevant in relation to why I used his conversation with you, James. Unlike you, I don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. James White and I agree on a ton of subjects. And on the subjects that you and him were discussing concerning science, I am in total agreement with him. And I notice you didn't even try to answer his question that I put forth in my last video.
Again, I don't believe any of this crap, so I could really care less even if you could find something that could refute my former theology.
That's right. So I will no longer be addressing anything by him concerning biblical doctrine. For it's obvious to me that he is very confused on certain subjects, as I have shown. And why waste my time if he could care less? Now let me address some of his non-biblical questions and comments.